Friends, welcome to yet another video in our series Finance and Investing Tidbits. In this video, we are going to look at the typical problems that startups try to solve and the typical contributions that they have been able to make. So welcome to this video. Friends, you would agree with me that today is the age of startups. Youngsters proudly say that they are working for a startup rather than for a mature company. And they're really excited about it. So what are the typical problems that these startups attack or solve that makes it so exciting for youngsters to get involved, even if quite often it means much less pay as compared to the mature companies? Of course, there is this incentive of stock options, but I'm not getting into that. I am more focused on the kind of problems that they attack, which makes it very exciting. The financial excitement is a separate issue. So the first problem in my view that startups attack is inefficiency. Inefficiency usually implies consumption or requirement of more resources than what would be ideally required. Another view to inefficiency could be that there are already existing resources, but they are grossly underutilized. So startups typically attack this inefficiency by creating business models which enable better utilization of these resources. I'll give you an example. Say there is already an investment which has happened in hotels, but right now many hotels are not properly utilized because people don't know about it. But a startup aggregates these hotels and makes them available for viewing by tourists, or it is brought to the attention of tourists, and therefore when the tourists are going to visit that town next time, there is a likelihood that that hotel will be experienced. So instead of creating new hotels, these startups are focusing on getting the existing facilities, existing resources better utilized. Another example is 3D printing. These 3D printing technologies have helped in saving raw material inputs and have reduced wastage of materials, because 3D printing technology is an additive technology. It only takes materials as are required rather than the typical earlier manufacturing, which used to result into a lot of wastages of materials. So the startups focus on bringing more efficiency in business. The second contribution that they make is they attack information asymmetry. What do we mean by information asymmetry? Information asymmetry simply means gap of information. And this gap of information comes in the way of conducting good business or doing business in a better way. So, for example, you have certain information that others that you are dealing with or you want to deal with don't have. So, for example, you want to take an auto and travel to a particular distance, right, or a particular location. Now that is a distant location, and obviously you're not sure whether the taxi chap would be willing to take you there. So quite often you have to go and check, and maybe you will find a fourth or fifth guy who is willing to take you there, right? You don't know which taxi fellow or auto chap is willing. The auto fellows don't have information about the passengers' needs. So the startups attack this information asymmetry and bring both these users and service providers on the same page. Similarly, information asymmetry also results in intermediation. That means somebody acting as a broker in between. Remember those real estate brokers who bridge the gap between people who want to sell a property and people who want to buy? But that increases cost of doing business because you have to pay brokerage. And again, a lot of times that's not very transparent. So, both buyers and sellers land up in paying brokerage. Like in the earlier days, the stock exchange was a very opaque system. There was a lot of information asymmetry. So obviously the brokers were making a lot of money at the cost of buyers and sellers. No longer. So that's because the startups and the newer ways of doing business, they focus on demolishing this information asymmetry. That's the second contribution. The third contribution that startups do is by bridging trust deficit. I'll just give you an example of what I mean by trust deficit. Suppose I were to go to a shop and buy a television set. The shopkeeper would not accept a check from me because obviously there is a trust deficit. The shopkeeper doesn't know me, and receiving a check from me, the shopkeeper may not be very sure delivering the television set to me, whether the check is going to clear or not. So startups attack this trust gap or trust deficit. So by using technology-based solutions, this problem is solved. So today we see a lot of payment solutions which have made it very simple to settle financial obligations without, each of these parties really revealing vital financial data. For example, of course, the UPI as a tool has come from NPCI. It's not really a startup in that sense of how we conventionally look at a startup. In a way, that's also a startup which created very new offerings. So this UPI as a payment platform ensures that the receiver and payer don't share their bank details, but at the same time you have created an identity which enables a seamless transfer of money, and that bridges the trust deficit, right? Similarly, by using technology platforms where information can be shared in a very confidential way, but at the same time one is able to have access to vital information. There are portals which have been created. For example, the matrimony portals, right, or employment related portals. They help in bridging this trust deficit because there is some way of vetting the people who are participating there. They are rated, and there is a way of keeping a check on their behavior. So the third issue that startups attack is trust deficit. The fourth is, of course, they come out with new methods or technologies which have not been so far thought of at all. They involve major technological breakthroughs. For example, some of the startups are right now working on alternatives to the lithium-ion batteries, right? So with that, hopefully one is able to go for material which is abundantly available. Of course, lithium has the advantage of it can be recycled, but at the same time the sources are restricted, and also there are issues which are geopolitical in terms of access to lithium. So a country like India has to look for alternative solutions, and startups are focusing on methods or technologies which can make us self-reliant. The last but very important issue that startups try to focus on is sustainability. So right now we all know that global warming, carbon footprints. So a lot of businesses have made very, very unsustainable, or have created very, very unsustainable business models. So these unsustainable ways of doing things must give way to more sustainable ways of achieving those objectives. Recycling, use of green energy rather than energy based on depletable resources are all these important issues in sustainability. Better utilization of water, right? So all these aspects are being addressed by the startup ecosystem. One other thing which also has been enabled by startup ecosystem is financial sustainability, because the startups have enabled creation of asset-light business models. So some of the largest hotel chains don't own a single hotel room, or largest taxi companies don't own a single taxi. And this is made it more sustainable, better utilization of resources, and also asset-light business models. Of course, I've created a separate video on what is asset-light, asset-heavy, asset-right. So do explore that. I would also give a link here for you to check that. But I'm just mentioning this, that this is another very important area of contribution by startups. For more such videos, do explore our channel, Dr. Abhijit Fadnis. Thank you.